There we go.
Hold on one second. We need a 10-second delay.
You think you're good?
Good now.
Okay, great. All right, so I am calling to order the Common Council Ordinance Committee special meeting. Today's October 30th, and we're starting the meeting at 7:03. And we have Mr. Hoovelman, Mr. Freyer, Mr. Camacho, and Norma Eichner all here in attendance. So we have a quorum. The first thing to do is to open the public hearing for the Affordable Housing Ordinance. Brian, is there anybody here who would like to speak in the public hearing?
So right now we have two attendees. We have Diane Cece and Nicole Eady. Diane and Nicole, if either of you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Diane would like to speak. Hold on one second. All right, Diane, please unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
I can.
Diane Cece, Olmsted Place. Do you not do any presentation of the ordinance prior to the hearing?
We do not.
Okay. I will. I'm working off of a copy that I think originally was in the minutes, but then it was posted with the legal notice. And I'm assuming that this version that was with the legal notice is the one that you're voting on tonight.
It is.
The last meeting? Okay.
Yes, this is, I think, the fourth meeting we've had discussing this this matter. So the way the public hearing works is we have the public hearing first, and then we'll have a discussion and then a vote. That's regular order.
Okay. Yep. I think I've noticed that in with other city business. Generally, there's a presentation to the public who may not be, following all of your meetings or watching, reading minutes or watching videos. So I would say from a process point of view, it would benefit the public in the future to at least have staff provide a brief overview and direct people to where they can get more information, because people will have another bite at the apple, I presume, when this goes to gets advanced from you to the council, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I did have a few general comments or a couple of specific things, and then a general comment. I also wanted to point out too, I'm sorry, I'm kind of a process wonk at my procedures here too, wonk, but the legal notice that got published, when the hour published it, I guess, it dropped a lot of the bullet point lettering. And instead, it literally just has bullet points. And so I think that needs to be corrected, just so that it's clear to people. And especially now when I go to speak to you, these things are a bullet point, and I'll have to just say, the first, second, or third bullet point versus A, B, C, D, etc. The first thing is I wanted to say that this ordinance is, I see it referenced as the Affordable Housing Ordinance, but I don't think that this is any kind of an affordable housing plan. I don't think that was the intent, but it's rather the Affordable Housing Account Ordinance. And I guess that's really all that it speaks to, but I don't see any reference here that cross-references this to a citywide affordable housing plan, unless I missed it in the fine print. I wanted to say in the preamble and the purpose of the affordable housing account that for my purposes, you could drop all the bullet points there except for the last one. I'm not sure why it's necessary to have commentary and I think some subjective observations there about what you see as the need, the current situation or the need for affordable housing. Under the definitions in qualified expenditures, I know that a lot of the meat of how this ordinance is going to work is ultimately going to come in the criteria for awarding funding that apparently the planning and zoning director will draft and submit, and that will need to be approved. but at least in some of these things, like in qualified expenditures, I see that the expenditures can include but are not limited to labor and materials. And there's nowhere in here that talks about labor with any stipulation that the priority should be given to local contractors, if not local residents. And is there something else that would dictate these funds going to someone that agrees to, I'm sorry, I'm losing the word here, agrees to conform to whatever standards we have for living wage or prevailing wages. I guess part of my concern with this is that this could be going to developers whose contractors come from, you know, other parts of the country, or hiring people and paying a wage that we're actually trying to address right here in affordable housing in Norwalk, where people can't afford to live, you know, to live where they work, etc. So I'm not sure if it should be addressed here, or if it's cross-referenced elsewhere, but I think that that should be taken into account if any of these funds go for labor. Under subsection 1-6 in the expenditures, the again, it directs the P&Z director to prepare all the criteria and the actual meat of how this thing is going to work. And then it goes on to the Common Council within a limited time frame for approval, but there isn't anything in here that stipulates. I guess my question on this would be, if it doesn't get approved by the council, then is the ordinance still in effect, or there is no ordinance, etc., without this actual document being approved? Under the second bullet point there, it says that the last sentence says the council shall have discretion to deny in whole but not in part such recommendations. And that led me to believe that, or that I wasn't sure if the vetting that gets done by the planning and zoning director for the incoming applications, will everything that met the criteria for applying get passed on to the council for consideration, or will it be vetted at his or her discretion, and then only those that he or she is recommending go forward to the council? I hope that was clear. Under subsection 1-7, for the affordable housing account reporting, this is one that I'm probably overly concerned with, but it says the committee shall, on an annual basis or as otherwise requested by the council, prepare and deliver the report, etc. And I think rather than on an annual basis, I'd rather see you folks come up with a definitive date or time frame or month, you know, say by December of each year or January of each year, so that the public, one, has an expectation of when they can reliably look to track these things. But also, I think then it ties in with the city's budget process as well. And I note in here that the city is able to allocate funds to this program, and it's probably worthwhile, while the city is discussing budgets and allocation and funding of good programs, to have this, make sure that this information is available to officials in the appropriate time frame. So I think that should be like December or January. And then in subsection 1-7, oh no, sorry, that's a duplicate there. I also wanted to understand, ahead of whatever the criteria is going to be, is the intent to advance this money ahead of any proposed work that's being done that's covered under this, the construction, remediation, repairs, improvements, etc., that laundry list there? Is the money being advanced ahead of any project, and then they have to come back and then prove that they used it in the manner that it was intended? Or do they get like a kind of a preliminary approval? And then once they get their CO for whatever work they did, if everything complies with what the intent was of the spending of the money, then do they get reimbursed for it? I don't know if that's actually here in any of this wording or it comes later in the criteria, but I would want to understand that. The second part of that for you folks is that if it does get approved in advance and it gets awarded in advance, who's doing kind of the post-mortem on these projects, and what happens if a particular project didn't comply with any of the components under which they got the money? Would they have to reimburse the money? I don't see any of that kind of spelled out in here.
Yeah, Ms. Cece, we're well past 3 minutes. I just want to see there's another speaker. I gave you a lot of headway because we do have time, but is there much more?
No, actually, that was it. I did have a general question that maybe someone can answer. Is that it's my understanding that this account or a similar account already exists, but it has a nominal amount of money in it. I want to know if this is the same fund that already exists and it's just being codified with an ordinance. And how does this relate to the fund that already exists and how much money is in that fund today? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak, Brian?
No, the only person who's left, Diane spoke, and Nicole Edie's here, but she does not have her hand raised, so there's nobody else.
Okay, great. So I think where we are, we've gone through many drafts of this ordinance. The ad hoc housing committee's gone through many drafts and worked very hard on it. Nora, do you want to say anything in conclusion before we vote to take it to council?
Sure, just very quickly to address a few of the questions that Ms. Cece raised. I do want to explain that yes, there is already money that the city has received over the last few years from developers. It's not an enormous amount of money, but there is an existing zoning regulation that requires developers in certain instances to contribute to this fund under our workforce housing regulation. And so this ordinance is to allow the city to actually expend those funds. The majority of the questions that Ms. Cece asked are questions that will be answered by the application process, because many of those answers would vary depending on what the project were or that the Affordable Housing Committee decided were the kinds of projects they wanted to fund in any given moment. So for instance, questions about whether the funds are paid beforehand or reimbursed depends in part on whether these are matching funds for other grants, or I mean, there's just a lot of complexities. And so the whole intent here is not to limit this program, but instead to let the Affordable Housing Committee work with the Planning, Zoning, and Community Services departments every year to design the appropriate program for that particular year. One other question that Ms. Cece raised, I did want to clarify. So the Affordable Housing Committee that will account a committee that will be established by this will review the applications. They will forward those applications to the council with their recommendations. So again, the whole point of this committee is to have folks who have experience in the affordable housing space, both lived experience and professional expertise, to opine on both what we should be funding in a given year, the criteria, and then also on the particular applications. The line about the council being able to vote on a project in whole or in part is to make clear that the council cannot pick and choose within an application, but the council will act on the recommendations of the ad hoc committee, or excuse me, of the Affordable Housing Committee as to the applications that they have received and reviewed in detail. I think that's it for the primary points that I wanted to clarify there. Yeah, Ms. Shanahan, I think that's it.
Great. Are there any other comments from other committee members or questions that we ought to address before we take this to vote to take it to Common Council? Mr. Freyer.
Yes, and maybe Nora had already covered this, but there doesn't seem to be anything in there that puts a time limit on how long you have to spend the money if you are selected for an award. Or is that going to be part of the criteria or the application phase, that there's a limit So I could foresee somebody getting approved for funds and then tying funds up, which would maybe limit the amount of funds we could give to somebody else if they don't begin their projects on a timely basis.
And again, I think that would need to be left to the criteria because, for instance, if the committee decided that what they were going to do was matching funds for a state grant, then the applicant is going to have to comply with the state grant or, you know, whatever it is that they're trying to match with, versus if, as Ms. Cece suggested, it's a reimbursement for something that was, you know, already built to criteria, then we might have a much more narrow time frame for getting the money out the door. So again, I think that's the kind of detail we wanted to leave to the particular criteria so that we can have maximum flexibility for the committee to really sort of see what in the particular moment is the best available use of the funds.
Yeah, I just didn't want to tie funds up and just have them sit there. So yeah, I agree that we have to remember that should be built into the application phase.
Right. And I think, I mean, you know, I think that is the kind of thing, you know, thankfully that we have, I think, staff who have a fair amount of experience, because remember that all of this will also, planning and zoning will certainly be oversee this, but this will also have to comply with all of the city's, you know, standard regulations around purchasing and procurement and all that. So I'm sure that Ms. Connors will have many stipulations as to the requirements to comply with our general sort of regulations around expenditure of funds.
Okay.
Great. Other questions or comments? Mr. Hooverman.
Yeah, this is a complete and total nit, but it's in 1.6b.
Let me pull it up, Dave. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a question I had when I read it. The fourth line, should individual or entity, shouldn't that be plural? Or should there be from an interested individual or entity? Solicit applications for such funds.
I think an interested individual or entity, or individual with, you know, the parentheses S on, you know, I think it's easier just to say an interested entity.
Whichever, but it's grammatically.
Good catch. Let's note
Radical.
that when we send it over to, well, when we make the motion to forward it to council, we should make that amendment.
That was it. I just have one thing that I would like to say, which is that I'm concerned about a cadence that we've gotten into, and this is a larger general thing. It's not necessarily directed at this particular ordinance, but the preambles that we are writing for all of these ordinances now, where we're really starting to make subjective commentary within those preambles that I'm not certain that those belong within the ordinances as we are codifying what would be considered law for the city. And that's just something that moving forward, I know I won't be a part of this, but it's something to think about, that we're walking a line, and this is starting to happen more and more, where we're making, I think, commentary on what we're doing as opposed to doing that which we should be doing. And that's all I wanted to say about that.
That's a good point. So does someone want to make a motion to move the ordinance as amended with that correction that Mr. Hooverman made to council?
Hold on one second, Lisa, bear with me 1 second. I just want to take a look at 1.8 with you guys real quick.
Was it in 1.8 or 1.6? I thought it was in 1.6. Do you
Yeah, this is it's third line down. I credit Diane for finding this. She just sent a question. It should be receive funds, not fines.
Oh, good catch. Thank you very much.
Yep.
So making the second correction with the two corrections, does someone want to make a motion to send this to, thank you, Mr. Camacho.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
All in favor of moving this as amended ordinance to common council? Great, so that's unanimous. We have one other piece of business, which is to move to accept the minutes of October 17th, 2023, our regular ordinance, our regular minutes. If someone would make that motion.
So
Thank
moved.
you very much, Mr. Hooverman. And everybody in favor? Accepting the minutes. And I just want to take one point of order, which is to thank Mr. Hooverman and Mr. Camacho very much for their service on this committee. I can't tell you what the contributions is that you have each made. Mr. Camacho came to the rescue of the leaf blower ordinance last couple meetings ago. That was great. And David, I've worked so closely with you on so many ordinances, and we are going to definitely miss the wisdom of both of you going forward. We're going to miss you guys a lot. So thank you for your service in the last year in Mr. Camacho's case, and David for the last 4 years.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Ed.
It was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
it's been really great. It's really so nice to work with. So the tradition is that the people who are leaving the committee would make a joint motion to adjourn.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
And you're-
Joint motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Everyone's in favor. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for making time on this Monday night.
Happy Halloween to everybody.
All righty. Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank you.